Looks like Fintan's recording the podcast.
No, that's better. No, my skin just looked a little bit washed out. Although I am sweating, it's fucking boiling over here.
Don't forget though, Fintan, we don't actually show the video. It's a thumbnail over the whole thing in YouTube.
Oh, is it? Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, then I don't have to. Were you having me worried to have my fucking background? I was like, making sure it was perfect.
Quite funny watching yourself with your lighting. Hello and welcome to the Kimberley IT podcast. I'm James, the founder of Kimberley IT. Joined this week with my co-founder Kyle. How are you,
Hello.
Kyle?
Yes, very good.
And we have our special guest today, someone I've known for probably a decade, I reckon, Fintan
That's
Murphy of Damson Cloud.
How you doing, everybody? Fintan here from Damson. Yeah, I think it's at least 10 years, James, for sure.
It's definitely a long time. We both started doing G Suite around about the same time, 2008-ish, 2007-ish time.
Yeah.
And it was Google for domains.
Google for domains, yeah, and then Google Apps. Still Google Apps is my favorite name for it. I still can't get used to G Suite.
Problem with Google Apps was whenever you spoke to somebody about Google Apps, they thought you were talking about Google's mobile phone apps. They had no idea you were talking about a suite of services. Because Google Apps became the name before mobile phone apps really kicked off.
Yeah.
So,
It was long before then, really.
Yeah. So that's where it started. So we'll hit straight into the recap of our past fortnight. Want to go ahead with it, Carl?
Yes, indeed, James. We had a move and a change of software. We had a great bit of software that we used to protect customers from nefarious websites and to make sure people weren't looking at things like porn at work and all that kind of good stuff. And it was for ages, Umbrella. And then it got bought by Cisco and it became a woeful nightmare for us. So we switched. James discovered DNS Filter, which provides the same service as Umbrella and actually a better service when we watched a video that showed the comparison between the products. And we've been busy moving our customers over to the new product, which is a bit old school. I enjoy it. James doesn't because it's what I used to do. It means actually getting on computers and removing things and installing things and stuff like that. I'm being an old engineer and starting my career as an engineer and not an entrepreneur, marketeer, salesperson. It was a bit of fun for me to do it and I'm still cracking through it. But it's a great bit of kit, really good software. And the guy we spoke to from the company, really nice young guy that we got on with, just easygoing, help us out. It's been good.
It's a nice small company. I think he said they had, it's like, was it 40 to 60 employees? I can't remember.
Yeah. He said it'd be a while yet. But we said, how long till you get bought then? So we've got a good few years in them yet before somebody big buys them and then they go crap. Everybody. But they all do.
That's what happened with Umbrella. Umbrella was Umbrella, and then it got bought by Cisco, and it's just they really don't care about that product anymore. Do you use anything like that, Fintan?
No, we don't do any DNS filtering. A lot of our customers, as you know, tend to be larger clients with their own sort of IT teams and stuff, and so they tend to handle that sort of side of things. So we might advise, but we wouldn't tend to get into that in detail. When we used to run the IT support business back in the day, we would have done. I'm actually, when you guys are talking about it, I was struggling to remember the name of the Linux servers that we used to install. It was a system that we used to install back in the day. You're talking like 15 years ago now, but it's not coming to me. And we used to install these in client sites back in the day.
I remember that kind of stuff, Vincent. No, it wasn't Squid something. It might have been Squid something. Yeah, I remember they were hard work because they would break a lot. Linux is based when it's what you've got is well written and it's bang on and you're not changing it and it will sit there and run forever because the internet runs on it. But when you're trying to tinker with something to make it kind of work what you want it to do, Linux is an utter nightmare for that because it will just give you the two fingers all the time.
I think I just remember the name of it. I think it was called Clark Connect, and I think I just googled it there. It's called Clear OS now. But I mean, there's so many of those because it's obviously an open system. There's so many of those type of things, and it was fantastic. It did generally. It chugged along for on its own without much input, and it was much cheaper at the time than so many of the other solutions. And we were often, like yourselves, trying to find those innovative solutions for clients. And I think that's the true value for customers. You guys found that the Umbrella guys weren't working. You went out, you found a better solution, and now you're implementing it for your clients.
So it's good. It's interesting. We got it at one client, and they have a workforce that use mobile phones, and it's quite clear that one of those mobile phones in there has got something on it that shouldn't be on there with the domains it's reaching out to, which Umbrella never seemed to have picked up, or if it had, it never highlighted it. Next thing we've done, which I guess you guys have probably done, so as your G Suite specialist as well, we've rolled out Google Chat to all our clients, and it's gone down really well. They really like Google Chat and the chat rooms and stuff like that. We've not had anyone. But when we first rolled it out, because it's such a switch, there's no in between. It's either you've got the old classic Hangouts or you've got Google Chat. It was like, oh, what's happened here? One day we went away, and the next day Google Chat's come out, and it's now on our thing. But we've had no one's moaned and gone, oh, I want to go back to the old one. They've just all got on with it, and they seem to love it.
That's good. And did you find you had to do much training or sort of like, I don't know, PDFs or anything like that?
Not really. I guess the biggest part of training, which I'm going to do a bit later today as well, I was going to say that, is we sometimes where you a end user doesn't click the new thread button in the chat room, so they'll follow on. So the thread is really to separate subjects inside the chat room and have different conversations going. And I noticed, I think it was either this morning or yesterday, a end user had replied to a thread that was related to something else with other people in that thread. So they're all going to get a notification about this this response. It's got nothing related to what was previously spoken about.
I've seen that kind of stuff, and it is the difficulty of that sort of Slack, Google Chat, you know, those sort of different systems where it's going beyond just having a quick conversation back and forth. You know, and we all know it from our sort of large chat, the G Suite Alliance, sort of trying to find something like, what was that thing Kyle or James was talking about, like, you know, a month ago, and you're like trying to find it. It's so difficult. Now at least it will be easier, but then there is a little bit of a learning curve for people, I think, you know.
Definitely a bit of a learning curve. Overall, though, they get the concept because everyone uses instant message, WhatsApp, all that stuff. So the actual basic idea of it's not a problem. You had the same with people you've spoken to, Carl?
Yeah, it has. It's the only thing that some people have said is that they didn't quite get the thread concept. And
straight away,
it's a generational thing. We have a lot of clients who are in my generation. They're over 40 years old, and they find some of this difficult. They're okay with the idea of back and forwards in a chat. When we introduced a chat room, the room's a little bit more tricky, but they get by. They've got enough. And then some people loved it because you showed them the Giphy bot and things, and they're away and they get it.
I used the Giphy bot and told an end user that he loved them. By accident. A completely different thing than I was expecting.
I didn't ask Giphy to say that, but that was what Giphy interpreted what my intentions were.
Yeah.
I'm all about the love, you know. I'm all about, that's what the world needs more of. I'm all about the love, James.
Message sent, not message received.
Yeah.
I discovered Giphy because you showed it, James, in our group chat, and I don't know if you remember, you were commenting on like the fact that obviously I hadn't come across it before because I was sending like 10 GIFs or something. I was like, oh, this is great. It does take a bit of getting used to because you've kind of got to request it and you've got to figure out the commands and things. But once you have that, it's fine.
Well, one of our biggest clients, when we rolled it out to them, they went Giphy mad. So much so, the director messaged me going, James, how do I get this Giphy to work? And can people see what I type in as the request, or do they just see the image and all this?
It's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question.
I think I wondered that as well. I think I've worked it out. I'm not 100% certain, but I think if you write a sentence and you include Giphy in that sentence, of course, they'll see the sentence and they'll see Giphy. But if you just message Giphy bot on its own with nothing else in that sentence, then I think they only see the image. I don't think they see what you've requested, what to put up.
Oh, that makes sense.
I'm still not 100% certain on that because sometimes it seems to, because you can't work out if people are on their mobiles or not, and if they're doing it from the Giphy on their keyboard, and then they don't need to bother with Giphy bot, they're just inserting the image, or if they're actually using Giphy bot. I can't tell, so I need to do a bit more testing on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing when Google roll out new stuff, it always takes us a little bit of time to just figure out what's the lay of the land in terms of.
Say the worst bot is the Meet bot in Google Chat. It just doesn't seem to work.
What's it supposed to do for like organizing a meeting or for putting in the video call?
You go at Meet, schedule a meeting for tomorrow, and it's meant to look for everyone's calendar and then come back with options and times and stuff like that. But it doesn't seem to work if there's people external to your domain. Yeah.
Right.
Unplug your
I
Google
just
Home.
unplugged my Google Home, because I heard yours gone off.
And so it doesn't seem to do it if there's someone external to your domain in the chat room. And even when it's full of people from the same one, I've just not been able to get it to work properly at all.
Yeah, I think it'll probably take a while with the type of bot things to kind of, maybe iron out the kinks.
Yeah, it's new, isn't it, really? And but it's new in that it's been around for 18 months, but it's now really properly new that people were actually using it because it's got external chat.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You start to see some of the real challenges with stuff when it's externally used. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's got proper users now, so developers now become interested in it because there's an audience there to do things with.
We'll start to see that expand out, I'd say, over time, pretty quickly.
I just wanted to give a final shout out for my recap anyway of Google Meet. So I had quite a few video calls over the last 2 weeks, and it's just so great. It's just so simple. Like, we're recording this podcast using Google Meet, and it's just so flexible. It's in the browser, no software needing to install. It kind of links into a story we've got in the news section about Zoom a bit later on and how crappy Zoom is. So I wanted to say how good Google Meet is. Do you use Google Meet? I guess all the time.
Yeah. We try not to use anything else. Sometimes we'll end up on a Zoom call if we're linking in with somebody else and they insist on using it. But I do love saying to people now, well, we'd rather if we use Google Meet because it's more secure. But yeah, no, I mean 100%. We've been using it since it was Hangouts, since it was before it was Google Meet. And I think Meet is definitely more robust than the previous Hangout video calling. I do miss some of the old features from the old Hangout video calling, but I'm hoping that. I don't know if you remember, like, the ability to have like a lower third. You could actually, like, we could have our name along the bottom. Remember that, James?
Yes.
We could also wear silly hats and things, which wasn't very necessarily useful but fun. Although it was a good icebreaker sometimes.
Hangouts on Air is the feature that I'm missing because that
was the last thing I was going to say. Hangouts on Air is what I really miss as well. That was great, where you could live broadcast.
Right.
Years ago, I used to do a podcast called This Month in Google Apps, and Fintan had been on it a few times, and that was using Hangouts on Air, and it would stream automatically, and it would stream onto YouTube, and it would
onto YouTube.
Save it onto YouTube. Yeah,
it was amazing. Like, it was so simple. Like, it's like streaming simplified.
And then they got rid of Hangouts on Air and said, you should use YouTube Live instead.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that because YouTube Live requires codecs and all this stuff and hardware to plug
and OBS and all this sort of much more complex stuff. So,
but it looks like it's coming back. I've read some stuff and it looks like they're bringing Hangouts on Air back to Google Meet, so you can do external broadcasts. You can do it internally up to 100,000. It's only a switch to get that back onto YouTube.
I know. I'm just like, can someone just
it's not like they've not got the technology, because we know they've got it. So it's not like they're look again.
Yeah, can you just turn that back on again, lads? Thanks. Yeah, I know, it was a great feature. No, so there's some cool little features like that. But I mean, in terms of just video calling, customers, I think Google Meet is amazing. Do you know what I mean? And it's so much more robust than many of the other solutions out there, like Zoom and Teams and stuff like that. And I know people who are using those in businesses, friends and colleagues and stuff, and they've had terrible trouble since COVID has hit with the volume of people who are using them, and many of those systems just fallen over, because they can't actually handle the spike in traffic, So
we've seen lots of businesses that have Google, and we've been helping them over COVID, even if they've not been clients of ours who've got G Suite, but they're going, we're using Zoom and stuff like that. Well, why are you doing that? You don't need it. Just use your Google Meet, and they don't even know about it.
There's so many Google. Sorry, Carl, go on.
I have seen, James. We had a chat with somebody that was doing that, and they were interested in Meet, and they were going to do it, and they go back and use Zoom again now. And I see them posting about using Zoom again. Unbelievable how a brand just sticks, and that's it. It's like,
the worst thing is
Zoom's like some crazy conspiracy theory and how it sticks, and they have just gone Zoom forever.
That's it. Yeah.
Never change. Zoom causes cancer. Get on Zoom, it's the best. It just doesn't matter. They don't care.
And these businesses, they have the full-on G Suite and they've got the full-on Google Meet, but they're using the free version of Zoom instead.
Yep.
I know.
Well, so did Parliament. I mean, so did the press office in the COVID briefings.
Heard about that, yeah.
Yeah, and I got chatting with a guy who works in IT in the cabinet office via LinkedIn, and he said, "Look, we've got Teams and we've got G, we've got both in the cabinet. You know, we've got both sets of tools." And he said, "I have no idea why they do this." He said, "It's not my remit. I don't." He said, "We don't control that. This is a separate part of the organisation, and they did that." And yeah, he just couldn't get his head around it.
But like IT people in government, it must drive them crazy, you know, when they've implemented something, or they, you know, they know that they have these tools and they can't get them to use it. I mean, it must just be so frustrating.
Well, you do worry when you read everything, and we're going to come on to this, or James, you know, you read about Zoom and their links with China, and then you find your own prime minister is holding calls over Zoom with his cabinet, and you're like, you know, isn't this MI6 101? Where is the head of MI6 here on this? You know, come on, this is easy. Maybe are we the conspiracy theorists now? And we should shut up.
The Google Meet conspiracy.
You want to jump straight into the news on that, James?
Let's move into the news. I'll switch the stories around. So we'll start off with the second one, which is our favorite, Zoom.
Yeah.
Saying free users won't get end-to-end encryption, basically, so the FBI and police can access calls. Yeah. Now, I was listening to do you know the Twit Network? It's run by Leo Laporte. He does This Week in Google as one of his podcasts. They have one called Security Now with a guy called Steve Gibson. It's an interesting interview, and basically, Steve Gibson had been in conversation with people from Zoom, and they're essentially admitting that end-to-end encryption isn't even end-to-end because Zoom keep hold of the keys. So
yeah, I mean,
everybody.
There's been so many. There's been so many articles and, you know, leaks about the security within Zoom. I think even if you take a step back from the individual issues, you know, because Zoom could fix the end-to-end encryption, or they could, you know, they could look at a particular issue. But I think when you actually take a step back and you look at, this is how this company treats security. You know, that's what concerns me. Like there was issues with the Mac, I think about a year or so ago, and I'm on a Mac and I had to update it because if I didn't, you know, someone could just join my call, or they could take control of the computer or something like that.
I've seen the video, Fintan, that they left the web server running on your Mac.
That was it. Yeah, the web server thing. And I just thought, like, it's that company's approach to security that scares me. And do I want my enterprise or my small business to be running on a system of a company that just doesn't care, just doesn't seem to care about security? Like, that's, you know, when we compare it to Google and how much they do care about security, that, you know, like we can argue about the individual things, or people could argue back to us and say, oh, well, they fix that now, or they, you know, they're going to sort out the end-to-end encryption. But it's the fact that they had to be embarrassed into doing this. Do you know what I mean? That's what scares me.
In the video with Steve Gibson, they also said that they basically have access to anything, even if it's even if it's end-to-end encryption, in that team members can, air quote that one. People from Zoom can jump into calls if they feel that there might be something going on there, some sort of abuse going on there, so they can kill the call and block the people on it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but and it says, you know, that is a classic. It's been touted for years. We must protect think of the children. It's a classic argument for why your privacy should be infringed, is to protect against terrorism or child abuse. Yet statistics will show you that those things will be minimal, and in the cases where they do exist, you'll get some clever paedophile like that guy the British guy who was in Cambodia, who knows his tech and will set everybody up with end-to-end encryption and then publish it on the dark web for those people who don't know about tech on how to do it. So they're not going to catch anything. Did Zoom shut out an American activist who was against China, and China asked them to close his account down, and they did?
Yeah, so there was a Tiananmen Square. You're not allowed to celebrate it in China, and there were people, Chinese activists, celebrating it on Zoom, and so China asked Zoom to close these people's accounts down, and it turned out one of them was based in Taiwan, and the other one was based in the United States, and they shut his account down as well. And Zoom's argument was, we're doing it because that's what they requested us to do, and it's illegal in China to do it. And that's fine if you shut Chinese nationals' accounts down, but if you're then shutting accounts down from people who are based in a country where it is legal, then you've got an issue.
Yeah, and they're also an American company, Zoom. Like, so they're shutting down.
But all their programming takes place in China.
Yes.
Yeah.
They have they're basically out. It seems like they sort of insource it to three teams in China to do all the programming and everything. But just don't use Zoom.
But the issue that we see is that people don't care. And you can talk to people in a good conversation and say, Google works really hard on security, and you can explain to them why and how, and they will simply, if they're in the mood, they will go, yeah, but Google reads my emails and I don't want them to send me adverts. I mean, it's amazing what sticks forever. The lie sticks, and the truth, like when a newspaper prints a headline and it's a lie, and then they have to retract it, and they print that on page 5 in the bottom right-hand corner, and no one reads the retraction, even though the retraction is legally correct. And this stuff still sticks.
I always feel with that, I know in the digital age it's maybe less important, but I feel when they have to print a retraction, they should have to print it on the same page that they printed the headline. So that would make them think about front page headlines more. Do you know what I mean? So like, if we have to print a retraction, like, it legally has to be on the front page. So like, we sure this is definitely true?
In the same size font.
Yeah, in the same size font. Because they'd find a way around it. Be like down in the.
We're going to bang on it. We'll bang on about Zoom forever, because in my Toastmasters organization, they didn't use a password on meetings, and I told them, and they got Zoom bombed with someone with their bits out. So now they do. I told them.
I warned you. I told you it would happen.
It happened in the organization, not my group. It didn't happen. No, that would be way too freaky. It happened somewhere in Toastmasters in the United Kingdom. They got Zoom bombed because they weren't taking any of the security. There's default in it, and that was it. Anywho.
Let's go on to the next story, which is really interesting. It's the company called Planets, whose satellites will aim to get a sharper view of Earth. So Planet, they will have 21 of the high resolution images. So they're going to have a lot of satellites up there, pointing at the Earth, taking amazingly high definition photos of the Earth up to every 20 minutes, up to 12 times a day. And because of where the UK is, because of where the UK is, we should get super sharp images available 12 times a day. And Google wants to plug into this technology, so that if you say, Carl, you go onto Google Maps and you see part of you're looking at some remote part in the UK, and it's not like that anymore. They built a supermarket there. You can actually, you'll hopefully be able to hit a refresh button, and that will tell the satellites to take a photo of it. And the next 12 minutes, whenever it comes around again, that image will be updated live, essentially.
You called it self-healing maps, or that was the term.
That's what it's called in the
called. That's incredible.
I've got a new car, refresh. I've built my shed, refresh. I've mowed the lawn, refresh.
There's going to be lots of privacy problems with this. But
in the bird next door, refresh.
It says here, Google is working on these self-healing maps, where if anyone notices a map is out of date, it will automatically trigger a new SkySat collect that will bring in a new image, automatically recognizing the buildings and roads, and then automatically bringing the maps up to date.
That's crazy.
The image has some sort of controls on it, I imagine. You can't just have hundreds of thousands of people on Google Maps just refreshing non-stop. I've mowed the lawn. Let me see what it looks like now.
When you go on the website, James, I went on the website. It's excellent. There's some fantastic images in the gallery section, and it's clearly linked to the use in agriculture and industry to be able to view what you're doing in your land. They can go down to 50 centimeters of object definition, which is phenomenal. Half a meter, the size of a monitor. That's unbelievable.
What? That's crazy.
It's absolute, and you look at who's put it up there, and it's all going up with SpaceX. So
they've currently got 15 of their spacecraft up there, and like you said, they've recently lowered them from 500 kilometer orbits to 450 kilometer orbits, so they can now feature the Earth's surface. They can now see any feature on the Earth's surface larger than 50 centimeters.
When you look at the article, and it says that SpaceX are up there working on satellite, working on broadband, and you think about Tesla and their new batteries. He's been doing it. Tesla is, Elon's been doing an Amazon. He's doing his Amazon. No one's going to see it, and then in about 10 years' time, everyone's going to sit there and go, "This guy just owns technology. He just owns battery power,
communication."
Pardon, James?
He owns low orbit of Earth.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, Amazon did what they did via Google AdWords. They built something and they focused on the customer and they used AdWords and they built this thing that became immense before anybody noticed it. And Elon's up to his game. Not that I think he's necessarily that's a bad thing, because I like a lot of the stuff that he does and how he views life. He's an interesting character and we could do more of him. But SpaceX are most definitely changing what's going on up there.
What's interesting is Planet is doing the photography. Their satellites are shoebox size as well.
Oh, they're really small. Oh,
interesting. Yeah.
That's good.
High res imaging. Just reading it on the BBC article about them.
I'm just having a look at the website as well. So the website is on planet.com gallery. That's what you were talking about, Paul.
Yeah.
I love how you can sort of slide over the image and see the old image and the newer image on some of them.
Yeah, there's some phenomenal things, and it must have totalitarian regimes and other countries just vexed, because I'm right, anything that's outside can be seen. Good news for one of our favorite LinkedIn people, Zap Shelter. Shout out to Zap Shelter. Get your shelters out there for hiding from this stuff.
I imagine it's quite difficult to shoot down a shoebox size satellite as well.
It also mentions that not only are they taking photographs in the visual spectrum that we can see of light, but they're using other spectrums of light to see what they can see through infrared and other aspects.
It's useful, that stuff is, because Google's got that. They've got that Sunshine project, haven't they? I can't remember the exact naming of it, but where you can go on Google Maps. It's equivalent of Google Maps, and you can see if you were to put solar panels on your roof, what sort of returns you'd get on the investment. And that's basically using Google Maps and filters to work out where the sun is and how it shines on your roof.
That's clever stuff, man, isn't it? That is good stuff.
So there's tons of stuff they can use. Because I imagine with these filters are kind of useful. So no, at the moment where it's kind of dry, and 2008 when it was really dry and we had that big summer where there was a drought, and there was it didn't rain for months, and you remember everything. It looked like you were in Africa before the dead grass everywhere. And people were able to see remains of Roman forts and things like that existed because of the patterns that were left on the grass.
Oh, right.
So I imagine maybe, depending on these filters, you might be able to apply filters to this to see the terrain and what was previously there and stuff like that they could be doing.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's good. I certainly advise anybody, go and have a look at that, planet.com/gallery. Brilliant.
Next story is going to be about Android 11, the next version of Android.
Hey, I had a look at this video of the guy on Verge talking about it. It looks really interesting.
Because normally we'd have had Google I/O by now and they'd have announced it, but because of the virus, that's all been cancelled. So they've done like a soft launch of Android 11 beta. And what I found really interesting is how they're focusing it now around conversations, especially in the notification shade. Do you roll with an Android or an iPhone, Fintan?
Well, it's actually interesting. I just switched to a Pixel 4, to Android. I switched to a Pixel 4 maybe 6 months ago, maybe less. I actually, myself and my son did a little video on our YouTube channel about our experience of switching, because he'd also been on iPhone. And there definitely is some challenges when you're used to the iPhone, switching over. There definitely is some things that you kind of miss. And a lot of it is just sort of getting used to a new operating system or whatever. But yeah, some of this stuff like around the notifications, I'm happy that they're making those changes. I'm going to be excited to see that.
So they're basically putting it into 3 sections, because at the moment you just have you have 2 sections in notifications on Android. You've got your important ones, and then you've got the ones that you can drop down, which are a bit less important, so they don't ding or do anything like that. They just appear in the other notification section. What they're bringing to the notification stage is one right at the top called Conversations, and that's where all your iMessage, all your instant messaging, I imagine your emails and stuff like that will go to the top, so you see them straight away. They'll even put a little picture of the person who's left you a message in the toolbar across the top.
Very cool. Yeah, so you can star somebody. Yeah, you can star somebody who's like your important contact, like your other half or something, and then if that person messages you, their picture or image is up there. I think that kind of stuff is very cool. And
I like that they're bringing the bubbles as well. So if anyone's installed Facebook Messenger on an Android phone,
do you like that the floaty thing? I'm not a fan.
I turned them off only because it was only Facebook Messenger that did it and no one else did. So it was 2 separate UIs that we were using. So I turned it off on Facebook Messenger. But if that becomes the default, then I'll probably leave the floaty bubbles on, because the thing with the floaty bubbles is what it does is you can wipe the face away, but if you tap on the face, rather than flicking you into that messaging app, it doesn't overlay over whatever app you're currently in. So if you're on Google Maps and Kyle, you send me a message, I can tap on your face and your message will appear on top of Google Maps. So I can reply back to that, swipe you off, and then I'm still back on the app that I was in originally. Rather than having to flick
I can see the value of it. Like I see why people would like it. I think it must just be a personal thing. I prefer just to be in the app or not be in the app. Do you know what I mean? I find because it stays there. Now again, maybe it's just because Messenger. Maybe when it happens with the other ones, I'll find WhatsApp or something, I'll feel differently about it. But definitely with the Facebook one, I'm like, why is it doing this? And I get annoyed with it and I constantly swipe it away. So.
I can't stand those bubble things because no matter what I'm doing or where I put that person, I touch it because I need to touch that part of the screen. It annoys the heck out of me.
Yeah, I've got it turned off on Messenger, but I'll probably have it on when it becomes default.
However, I will also take on board that I didn't used to like the swipe gestures from the bottom of the screen until James enforced it, that I had to do it. And now I can't not use swipe. Yeah, he just would have every time he saw me before lockdown and go, why have you got that swipe? He'd just have a pop at me. So eventually I had to just do it just to shut him up because he wouldn't leave me alone. And now I'm used to it.
It's quicker.
Yeah.
It is quicker.
Sometimes,
yes, I know.
He's accepting that it's quicker. Sometimes it is a learning thing.
James, question for you on 11. I'm going to need a newer phone, aren't I, if I want to run that?
Your OnePlus, there's a good chance that they'll roll it out. We don't know. Possibly.
Oh, okay. I'm toying with it later this year, whether to go to a newer phone. I don't want to get into that conversation, but yeah. I'm quite old now.
The other cool features that you'll like is new permissions. So
yeah, I like this.
When you open an app, you can now, it will ask you, say the app wants to know your location or it wants to use your camera or your microphone. Mm-hmm. You can grant it just for this time only. So as soon as you close that app, it no longer has permission to the microphone or the camera. And the nice thing is apps that you haven't used for a certain period of time, it will automatically remove the permissions from those apps. So you reopen them to re-grant it. That's nice. That is because
that is definitely, because sometimes you do that when you're trying a new camera app or something out, or you just want to make a filter or something, and then you forget that it's
you forget about it. Yeah.
Or it's like say like a good example would be something like Meetup app where it wants to know your location so it can tell you meetings that are nearby, and you use that. And you want to use that once, and then you leave that app on your phone, and it knows everything about you for ages and ages and ages because it's just tracking you because you're giving it permission. And now that
sometimes I forget about apps I've connected to, like my Facebook or my Google, and I go in and I'm like, Jesus, that was months ago or years ago. I need to get rid of that, And like that, like you say, Kyle, just forget about it,
Yeah, you just do because you just read an article and go, oh, there's this new app, so I'll try it out because this review says it's great, and you go, nah, I don't like it, and you've signed off all these permissions. So that's a really good move. I like
the final big change, which I'm going to love because I've got quite a connected home, and I have to use the Google Home app, and that's just awful, or the Amazon one. But they're building it into the actual operating system now.
Yeah, UI really like that. Home. That's cool.
It looks nice.
What does that mean then, James?
So sorry, James, you're going.
You go for it, Fintan. I'll let you describe it.
It's just part of the notifications area. Essentially, when you hold the power button, you can currently just do screenshotting, but it will bring up this area that will have all of your home controls. You can turn lights on. You can, whatever you have sort of set up, your smart plugs or whatever, your lights, you'll be able to control them from there. And I'm like James, I've Google Homes all over the place, and we've got smart plugs and things like that. So being able to just access that from a long press on the power button makes a huge amount of sense.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've got my first ever smart plug in my house. I'm usually years behind with doing all this kind of stuff because I just frankly can't be bothered to do it. But I got two smart plugs. I picked them up on Prime.
You've got the doorbell. You just lost the charger. Once you get the charger back, you'll be able to use your doorbell again.
I can charge it, James. I just can't get it off the door because I have the screwdriver for it. But I will eventually, at some point, take it off the door. I've gone back to old school technology with a note that says "come around the back of my house," and since I'm always in, to be honest,
it definitely works now. I just got these LED smart lights behind me, and I can control like the brightness.
Okay.
The color. Yeah. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
We can. None of the viewers can, but
I know none of the viewers.
They're really nice. He's got blue now, purple.
No, I was genuinely going to ask you guys, like, if I wanted, why would you? What do you do with the smart home stuff? I get the plug. I turn off my bedroom light when I go to bed. Okay, that's pretty handy. What else are you using this stuff for?
The doorbell's great when it works for deliveries and when you're out and about.
What do you mean when it works? Why does it not work?
The doorbells I found not the Ring doorbells aren't always reliable. Someone will press the button, and because it depends on your Wi-Fi as well. I've got a pretty strong connection down there, but there have been times where you guys press the button and nothing's happened. It's made the noise, but it hasn't sent the message to anything or any other device.
Sure.
It might well be because I'm using a battery one rather than one that's wired into the mains electric.
I looked into that before I got it, and I'd seen those issues. I got the Nest doorbell, and it's wired in, and it is also wired into a traditional doorbell bell. So the traditional doorbell bell will ring as well. So even if there's like a fail-safe, although ironically that's stopped working for some reason, but it did used to do that. And then it will announce it on the Google Homes, and then it will also ping on my phone, and I can see. Now the phone can sometimes be delayed, but the Google Homes will always announce it. So
that's class. That's class, because that means if Fintan gets a delivery and they say, "Oh, you weren't home," you can go cough. Oh, my house goes mental. You go, brr, brr, brr. There's no way you're missing a delivery.
Yeah, and you can, and on the Nest, which is now Google, obviously, doorbell, it pops up with like some little shortcut buttons, and you can just press a button, and it will say, "I'll be there in a minute," and it says it in the googly voice, or "I'm not here right now," or whatever you want, or you can obviously tap the mic and you can talk as well.
I
like the Nest one, but. Yeah, I like the Nest one, but I would say like my Wi-Fi is right at the front, and so you do need a good connection as well. And I would have someone come and install it. I thought about doing it myself, but unless you're really into that stuff, because you've got to hook it up right to the power supply. So it depends on how.
That's the reason I've got the battery one, because I can't do it myself, and I was being stingy and didn't want to pay anyone to come and do it.
My recommendation would be like get an electrician, or if there are Nest installers, and just get some, because it is brilliant. I love it. And it will come up. We have one of the Google Home with the screens, the hub ones, and so when someone rings the doorbell, it pops up and you can see them. So we can see who's at the door when we're in our kitchen before we've even walked to the door, which is handy.
Yeah.
It's also very good for catching kids knick-knacking now.
I've got a mixture of Amazon Echoes and Google, just because Amazon Echoes came out first before Google brought in their stuff.
I gave all my Amazon Echoes away.
I'm starting the small switch over, even though I personally think Google Assistant is the worst product Google has ever made. It is just absolutely junk as far as I'm concerned. You ask it simple things and it can't answer it. You ask it to play a song, and I can't play that song, but I'll play this instead. It is just absolute. Because I've got YouTube Music. I'm subscribed to all the services. But like one of the examples was Beauty and the Beast. So my daughter's into Beauty and the Beast at the moment.
Sure.
So I was just asking it to play a song from Beauty and the Beast. Could it do it? No, not a chance. No. It would just come back with something else, some hardcore thrash metal or something like that.
Yeah, the worst actually is music is like you can kind of get there eventually. The worst is podcasts. I've got this podcast with a strange name. It's actually one of the ones I'm recommending at the end, and it takes about 10 minutes to get Google to play it because of you've got to like really say a specific phrase, and then it will play it. Yeah, they definitely have some areas to improve. But we had huge trouble with Alexa because it wouldn't. My other half, Leslie, it wouldn't recognize her. It wouldn't allow her to speak to it. Only the males in the house. It wouldn't recognize a female voice. It was really strange. It was like a sexist Alexa.
Bring that WLM, Women's Lives Matter, against Alexa.
Well, my son would actually say, "Hey Alexa," or whatever the command was, and then Leslie could talk to it, but she couldn't activate it for whatever reason.
Because when you use Google Home and Google Assistant, it records what you've said into your account, so you can go back on there. Mine is literally full of F off Google. You're bloody stupid, Google. What are you doing, you silly, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The best thing is it actually understands that. So if I was talking downstairs and she cut in and I said, I'll just F off Google. And she went, "Oh, thank you for your feedback. I will now," and stuff like that. They actually know what F off is. They know what F off is, feedback.
Yeah, you can actually tell it to shut up. You can say, like, "Hey, Google, shut up," and she'll go, "Oh, yeah."
I'm just when we hit the singularity, I'm dead because Google Assistant is
They're gonna send out the ninjas and assassins to kill you. Kyle, I'll give you one last one on the smart home that I used. That was actually one of the best things that I did. Christmas last year, you might have seen the video because I shared it on LinkedIn. I went to a store here called Home Store, and more sort of like a Home Depot type store, and I bought loads of these LED lights, about 50 quid, and it's a huge string of lights outdoor, so it went all the way around the whole garden pretty much. And I connected it up to a smart plug in my shed, and because I have the office here, I have Wi-Fi basically in my back garden, so the smart plug could connect to it. So now I can say, "Hey Google, turn garden lights on," and the whole garden just lights up. And it's fantastic. So that was a really cool little use of the Google Home.
For me on the smart stuff, the most is the cameras. So I've got Nest cameras. Because the thing is, Nest cameras cost you a few £100 a year, and you've got that, and you'll get an alert if there's any problems at your home straight away. I've got the smoke detectors as well, so I can watch it burn down from the inside. But it will alert me there's smoke, and then I can turn the cameras on and have a watch and see the house burn down while I'm away. But the key here is don't invest in a burglar alarm in your house, because no one, you use it, no one takes any notice. But if I'm away and I get an alert from my camera, I'm sure as hell going to check that out. And if I see that someone's in there, I'm going to actively call the police and say, you need to get over there. There's someone in my house. And that doesn't happen if you've got a burglar alarm. That just goes off, and your neighbors, everyone just totally ignores it. So if you're going to invest in security, the cameras are the way to go. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, we have a whole bunch of them, front and back. And the Nest doorbell is also a camera, which is great. You know, it can alert you as well. So
I'm so old school. Just couldn't be bothered with that. I'm just going to go with the fact that burglaries are quite a low statistical occurrence. And even if they do, the police couldn't be asked to come around. And even if they can be asked to come around, which I've had, they don't do anything about it anyway. So just get your insurance and get on with it.
But with the Nest cams, you can shout at people through your camera. You can say, get out of my house.
Now you're talking fun. Now I'm not all up for shouting at people from cameras, just hollering into the street. That's more like fun.
Well, in the kitchen to check when the food's ready.
When we got
guys here that this is any more than a gimmick at the moment, except for turning my lights on and off. That one's cool. Turn my bed light on and off. Good. Don't have to get out of bed.
The other thing with the Home Hub, and it connects with Duo, you know, Google's other video call system. We won't get into that mess, but you can make calls directly on that, so that's very handy. And we got one from my parents who are in their 70s, and so they can say, okay Google, call Fintan or call Donald, and it will just call us. And we got one for, you know, each family has one, so that's very beneficial for us. And they use it for reminders and to see their calendar and things like that, because the visual hub one has a screen and a camera. So that's been good.
That one. I need to get rid of my show. All my show does is show me it's basically a picture of my two daughters on my desk. It's just a very expensive picture frame at the moment. It just didn't work.
That's probably enough on smart homes, is it, James? Because we
have a
few more things to cover. Sorry.
The PlayStation 5, which you pointed out here, Carl.
Yeah, I won't spend too long on this. PlayStation 5 is due to come out very soon. The console has been ridiculed for how it looks. It's huge. It's got a disk drive in it. We're seeing a split. Stadia, in my opinion, is the way that gaming should go. It should be streaming by a controller. PlayStation are going the other way. Who's going to win? Have you seen the thing? It's immense. It is big.
It's huge.
It's like old school VCR size, if you remember those things.
I don't think Microsoft or PlayStation, Sony will have gone the wrong way just yet. I think they're probably going to be okay for this generation. But I think that
maybe right now, James. Yeah.
The interesting thing with the PlayStation one is there's two versions of it. There's the one, and then there's another version which is slightly smaller, which is the digital edition.
Correct.
That's all downloading the software onto it. It's not quite streaming yet. Streaming is definitely the future, but a bit of work and kinks that need to be ironed out of it. So I've got Google Stadia, and over the last week I've experienced an issue with it, and that's related to Google Home actually. So we quickly go on the Google Wi-Fi Home. As you know, you have a Chromecast and a controller for Stadia if you use it on TV, and they both connect directly to the free Wi-Fi to the data center. So Chromecast and the controller. The problem is I've got two Google Wi-Fi hubs, and if they connect, you can't. Google Wi-Fi doesn't let you pick which hub a device connects to. It just connects to whichever one it finds first or has the strongest signal at that point in time. So it happens that the Chromecast decides to connect to one hub and the controller decides to connect to the other hub. You get some serious lag issues. Because they're not going. If you then have to try and you basically have to go and turn one of the hubs off, then reconnect them so they definitely connect to the same hub. Then turn the hub, then you turn it all back on, and that will work fine. But even through Google's own Google Wi-Fi, it plays up. And Google's Wi-Fi has a special setting for Stadia in it in the apps for streaming to give it priority and stuff like that. But it just doesn't work if they connect to different Wi-Fi hubs. So I had quite a private chat with Google Stadia on Twitter on their DMs, and they were saying, "Hey, you basically got to turn one of the hubs off until you get them both connected to the same one, and then turn it back on. There's no other way." I was thinking, well, can you pass a message on to the people who did Google Wi-Fi app just to give me an option that I can tell a device which one it should connect to?
It's very simple to do. Yeah, that's stupid.
That sounds more like, James, you've got to put another Wi-Fi device into your house with a different SSID for Stadia only.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Well, no. I know you wouldn't. You're as flexible as an iron girder. I'd imagine that was quite a frank and open conversation that you had with Google Stadia support as well.
Yeah, it was fine. They agreed. They gave me some suggestions beforehand because we weren't 100% sure what it was, and then I figured out, okay, these are obviously connecting to do separate things. It was actually when I plugged my headphones in that it went really bad. Really, really bad when it started streaming the audio because when you plug the headphones in, the audio streaming stops on the Chromecast because it's not going to TV anymore. So it then goes into the controller and it streams to your controller, and that really caused a lot of lag. That did in the actual gameplay and everything.
Interesting.
I'm very careful, Fintan, not to reply to James's tweets. For example, I've done that in the past, and then he's just later on gone to, "What are you doing? What are you replying to my tweets for? Stop." I reply to my tweets.
That's not what they're for. They're for complaining.
It's literally like, who do you think you are? Just leave my tweets alone. Oh,
not a problem anymore now because Twitter lets me control who replies. So I just don't mention you.
I just know not to now. I might occasionally bet, maybe like one, just to be brave.
I saw you like me one the other day, and I thought that's okay.
Well, that's it. It was. I wasn't even arguing with you. I'd be having some banter or supporting your argument. You just leave them alone. It's not really good. But you get used to your work colleagues. You get used to
it. Now it's the main event.
Yeah. No, wait. Before you move on to the main event, I have
one other thing I was going to show you. Yeah, carry on.
I have a question on Android. And I want to know if this happens to you guys. Have you guys had issues with Bluetooth on Android, on your Android phones?
What sort of issue then? Give me a clue.
So I got a headset. I have a couple of Bluetooth headsets. This is one of them. It's just connected to my laptop at the moment. It works fine, and a whole load of them work fine. But I got a headset a while back, a new one. It's a sports one so it's like semi-waterproof,
Mm-hmm.
And it won't see the Pixel phones can't see it at all.
I've had that problem.
Like at all. And I've tried my son's Pixel phone as well, and it just won't see it. And I also have issues with the Bluetooth on, and this is my only major issue with the Pixel phone. In my car, if the Android phones connect, every now and again, at the beginning, the music will cut out for a period of time and come back in for maybe a minute. And then it's like it will catch up with itself, and then it's okay. But it doesn't happen on iPhones. It's weird.
I had a Wi-Fi set of JVC headphones, and they just decided never to see my phone again, ever. I had to buy some new headphones. Decided to stop. Put them on, and my old 6 that I've got here works fine. Just broke. End of. I don't.
Have you had any Bluetooth issues, James? No, you never.
No. In the car, I use an AUX cable to plug my phone in.
Oh, old school. Okay.
Yeah, and I've got a Bluetooth headset. Not had any issues. I've got the Android watch, which uses Bluetooth.
The reason I thought it was interesting was that the new earbuds that Google came out with, there's been a huge amount of people complaining about connectivity issues, and that's one of the first sort of major Bluetooth headphones that Google have sort of launched, and I mean they're trying to compete with the AirPods. So it's just interesting that there's a whole lot of Bluetooth issues now with those, and I kind of wondered if it's because they've launched a headset, do you know what I mean? Whereas before they had Bluetooth and, but it was just kind of on the phone. They didn't necessarily test it with.
I don't all of the headphones I've got will only go to 50% charge before they cut out against my phone. Like that's it. If it says 50%, then they'll just go on and off and on and off all the time. They have to be. I can't run them down, and I've got multiple running headsets. I've got big earmuff one.
Yeah.
But this little thing, the Bluetooth portable speaker, that will go down to 0. That's a great little thing. So I don't know. Maybe it just depends on what the device is.
Android is strange with Bluetooth, I have to say. It's something that's like Google haven't figured it out, which is odd, you know.
To be honest, Fintan, you've gone a bit risky going with the Pixel devices. Great cameras.
I remember you telling me this. You warned me about this when I suggested.
Because I used to always have the Nexus devices, which were before the Pixel, and essentially the Pixel's the same thing now. It's Google's beta testers. Yeah. They bought versions of Android on. The problem with a Google phone is, that's why I won't touch them anymore, is it's great when you first buy it, and then you get the other versions of Google and it just goes down and your phone just gets destroyed really quite quickly as soon as a new version of Android comes out. They just don't want to optimize it. They're not interested anymore. So I flicked to, after the Nexus program ended, I flicked to OnePlus, and that's been great so far.
And OnePlus is, who makes those?
It's a Chinese firm, but well, they're all Chinese anyway. But OnePlus was basically the spiritual successor of the Nexus program in that it was good quality phones at decent prices and always the latest version of Android. But they had a separate beta program for people who wanted to go on beta versions of Android and stuff like that.
Rather than mixing it together.
Yeah, and with the problem with the Pixel and the Nexus is it was pure Android, and so you always got the latest version, and there's no differentiation by Google between who's a beta and who's not, and who doesn't want to be. And it's the risky thing. So you might find that your problem is actually something to do with the version of Android on your phone, and it may get fixed, or it may not.
I felt that's probably what it was, and I remembered you saying that to me when I went with the Pixel 4, or warning me. But anyway,
before we move on to the main event, I just want to show you the guys I teased you before. So this is a deep fake video. It's made by the guy that I think I've showed you stuff before in the past car. He takes videos from like the 1800s, 1889 and stuff like that, and upscales them to 4K, 60 frames per second and all that using deep fake.
You showed the one with the train, I remember.
Yeah. And this is his latest one, and he's turning famous paintings what the person in the famous painting would have looked like in real life. So are you seeing my screen? Anyone who's not won't be able to see it. See a picture of Mona Lisa?
Yeah.
Hit play, and this is using AI to show what Mona Lisa would have looked like in real life.
Okay.
It's quite attractive, to be fair. There you go.
Oh, I mean, you can see the AI-ness, but it's pretty good. Yeah.
He's done it to lots of famous pictures. I'll put a link in the show notes and on YouTube for people to see this. But
Dennis Shriver.
There's loads there. So
yeah, so another one. Who was?
This one is.
We should be talking, Kyle, so that people.
Describe what you're seeing there. It's impressive, isn't it?
It is a podcast, so it's very impressive.
Go on, carry on. That's a very famous picture.
Yeah. And
we're now going to see a beautiful woman with ginger hair is now being transformed into a real woman. With dark hair.
Possibly look like in real life.
It's cool. So essentially, it's overlaying over the painting and then seeing what the person might have actually looked like.
It's probably using the same sort of technology of that website thispersondoesn'texist.com, where it generates
I knew I knew that picture. It's in Monty Python's Flying Circus at the start. That is.
This is the girl with the pearl earring. I actually think the AI does a better job for her than the painter did.
She looks like an Antifa activist. This one, if you ask me.
The girl with the pearl earring, she looks far better in AI.
Well, it's kind of, it's taking some guesses with hair.
Massively on that one. Well, she's wearing a bandana in the picture, so it's completely made the hair up.
That one was, it's kind of weird, isn't it?
There we go. Here's a super famous painting.
Yes, indeed.
The American Gothic. And it will now turn these people into real characters.
Man turning up on the screen. Yeah, what we're going to do with the woman, she's not so old. Ah, look.
It's making him younger. It's showing what he might look like when he was 30.
Yeah. Shorten his neck. and he's looking around a bit now. And the woman, she's having her neck shortened down as well.
I think some of them it's easier. Do you know what I mean? Like that's a very detailed front-on picture, well, you know, or painting. So it's easier for it to maybe predict. Where some of the other ones, it's harder. Do you know what I mean? This
guy's Dennis Siakraf. I don't know how you pronounce his surname.
Shirav.
On YouTube, he's got. I'll stop that now. He's got tons of videos where he's used AI to upscale really old videos. It's really and actually added sound to them. So silent videos, which of course they were back in the late 1800s.
Get that
added sound and all that stuff to it as well.
Definitely spend some time wasted on that.
So main event now. Interview with you, Fintan. Are you ready? Are you prepared for your interview?
I'm prepared, James. I am prepared. I live my whole life prepared to be interviewed by you at any moment.
This episode is Hard Talk, James Kimbley.
Do you know what's interesting about Google Meet? After I went off that presentation, it's put you both back on screen, but it's put you on the opposite sides of the screen.
Yeah, that's happened to me as well. Yeah, you've gotten used to it being in one place, and now it's.
Anyway, tell us all about yourself, Fintan. What's your business? Your Damson Cloud, and what do you do?
So,
and how you got the name?
And how you got the name? Yeah, that's actually the story behind the name is good. So we started the business back, or I started the business back when I was actually still in school originally. I started fixing computers in schools and then in college, and then eventually I kind of thought, maybe this could potentially be a business. You know, it was just me on my own at the start. And my brother, Donal, who you guys know and have met, he was an IT manager at a publishing company. So he was the real IT end, and I was sort of the entrepreneurial end. So he was the nerd of the group. I always kind of used to say that I just sort of sold what Donal did in the early days. And the name actually came from when we sort of, decided to set the business up officially, sort of the two of us. I think it was around 2005, if I'm remembering correctly. Donal might correct me. I'm nearly sure it was around 2004, 2005. And I remember us brainstorming about different business names and stuff like that. And we were kind of Googling them, to see if they were used up yet by somebody else. And we used to have a damson tree in our backyard in our parents' house. And at the time I was still living at home because I was, only still in college. And we decided on the name Damson Technologies back then. And then when we set up the business with the sort of cloud part, which was much later, I'll talk about that in a minute. We decided to kind of chop the Damson Technology bit off and use the word cloud. Everybody seemed to be using the word cloud. So I think so many of the Google partners have the word cloud in there. It's maybe a little bit overused, but that's kind of the story of the name. So on our website, you can actually check the about. There's a picture of me in the treehouse when I was about, I think 7 or 8, if you want.
Fintan, does that make you similar to James in that this is all this is what you've done in your entire career? I don't mean that that word "all" puts it in the wrong sense, but often I'll say with James, James, I had one job. Zero job. You've always run your own business.
Yeah, so like I would have had part-time jobs obviously as a kid, do you know what I mean? But other than that, yes, you're correct. And Donal would joke as well, like you do with James. He would say, "Well, you've never had a real job, You've always worked for yourself."
I'm glad to hear that now. Next time I meet up with you guys and Donal's there, I'll be able to hit him up on that one because we can get together in a little club.
You guys can connect.
We've been employees, we've been employed. We'll have a banner. We'll have a little
You guys could protest. You guys could protest together.
Yeah, you big fat cats. Big CEO titles.
With your entrepreneurial brains.
That's it. Entrepreneurial.
It was kind of. I kind of had to drag down into it a little bit, and he'll admit this himself. He was less into the owning your own business thing, but I mean he loves it now. Do you know what I mean? And we did have a very traditional business originally. We did IT support.
Yeah,
true IT support, like the type of stuff you were talking about yourself, Kyle, in your sort of previous careers. And we would have gone out and set up servers and Microsoft small business servers, and we would have done maintenance contracts and all that wonderful stuff back in. This is before clouds. We would have been setting up ISDN lines and dial-up. I mean, that's how long ago it was. I can remember. What?
G Suite for life for me.
But this was before.
Never touch Microsoft.
You never do any of that, James, at any point.
No. Because Google Domains came out it's about 2007, 2008, isn't it, Fintan?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And that's when I started Kimberly IT, 2007, 2008, so I was straight in from Google from the start.
Yeah, you see, we had a traditional support business before then, so we, it was a little bit different, and then the kind of Google thing came later, and it was interesting because it was Donald that really saw that, and he really saw where Web 2.0 was going. He used to read these sort of futurists, and these people would be predicting where technology was going. He'd follow all those sort of blogs, it wasn't sort of YouTube and podcasts back then. And he sort of said, like, Finn, we need to get into this like Web 2.0 thing. It wasn't even cloud, really wasn't termed at the time, it wasn't being used as much. And he was like, we need to start selling this because like in 10 years, there won't be any computers to maintain. And I was like, what? That's our whole business. What do we do? And I was kind of freaking out a bit. And he was like, no, this is the future of this sort of stuff. And he was the one kind of filling me in on this and sort of saying, this is where things are going. And we started selling Google actually before there was a reseller program. We started moving some customers off Microsoft Windows servers and things and setting them up on Google Apps as it was then, or Google Domains. I think it was Google Apps when we were doing it. It must have been, because the reseller program launched 2009, so it must have been 2008 or something we started pushing people onto it. We use it ourselves. So like, I don't think, we never had a server, so I think we used it from day one, pretty much. Yeah, I think we must have used it from day one. It was free then for up to like 100 accounts, I think. Wasn't it?
Yes.
Was it 150 or 100, something like that?
It was so.
It was definitely 100 something.
Yeah. It was. I think it was 100. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had one of the original free accounts, and
the first requirements to become a reseller was you just had to sell 50 seats. That was it. You did that, you became a reseller.
Yeah. You just buy 50 seats on your own domain if you wanted. Yeah.
in a trial, and then hand them back afterwards.
It was so crazy. No certifications, nothing. Yeah. It was like anybody in the basement.
I'm saying nothing changes. I'm not referencing G Suite and Google because you do have certification. How many products have zero? Have no real. They'll say, "Oh, you must pass this sales exam." I always like it when I ask to pass a sales exam because I know it'll be 8 questions of which I can repeat it endlessly forever until I get it right. It's pointless.
It did get tougher though. It was probably about 2015, 2016 when it was at its toughest, where you get proctored examinations and stuff like that.
They got proctored examinations, and they at one stage, we don't know how much you want to go into the some of the issues of the Google Partner Program, but they also had that criteria for people to hit, which was difficult for many of the very small partners who maybe only had a few customers on it, or it wasn't maybe the core part of their business, because you needed to hit a certain amount of new business. It wasn't the recurring part. And that was tough. And a lot of people thought they were going to get kicked out of the program. So it was sort of a strange year or so for some companies. And then they just sort of scrapped it. It was weird.
Because Damson, you specialize in enterprise businesses, don't you? You don't.
Well, yeah. I mean, at the time, so this was the thing that we sort of transitioned over time, and we started. And actually, it's an interesting transition to UK customers as well, because originally we only sold in Ireland, and now actually more of our business is in the UK than is in Ireland. Which is interesting. Sometimes we try to make it even, but you lose a customer, you gain a customer. Sort of. It tilts back and forth, but we started. Now, don't ask, I'm terrible on dates, so I won't necessarily remember dates, but for the first couple of years, and we were kind of doing the Google stuff, so 2009 to 2010, we were trying to trying to sell into bigger companies, and we were sort of moved our traditional customers away. We were moving away from the hardware model. We were moving more into just Google, and we were trying to figure out how to make money off it, how to make a full business out of it, because we had a full business with the IT support, but it was like, how do we make a similar size, if not bigger, business with Google? And we knew that we just needed bigger numbers. And I can remember us getting our first 100-seat customer opportunity, and it was passed to us by someone in Google actually, and it was a company called Milkground, which are owned by News International. And it was 100 seats. It was 100 users, and it was, at the time, it was a massive project. It was like, I don't know, 5 or 10 grand or something. It was like way more than whatever we were getting here for kind of Google stuff. And I can remember having a conversation with Donald, like, is it worth flying over? You know, is it worth kind of jumping on a flight? And I thought, well, I could fly over and back the same day, you know, like, why not? And so that's what we did, and that was our first UK customer. And then very quickly we started to grow the business in the UK, and it was primarily because Ireland was behind in terms of technology, which it tends to be. So technology, you know, as we know, the US tends to be sort of the first to try stuff out. It comes to Europe. And then you've companies like Germany, as we all know, are sort of, you know, heavy against sort of cloud and things like that very often. But you know, Europe, it will often be Europe and the UK. And Ireland tends to be kind of like, well, just see what everybody else does. and then when it's tried and tested, then we'll do it. And the kind of the pitch in Ireland was like, what is the cloud? And then I think you should buy Google's cloud. So it was a 2-step sales process. Whereas in the UK, they already knew what the cloud was. We didn't have to have that conversation. So we were going into businesses and I was going, so this is what the cloud is. And they were like, yeah, we know. Can you get onto the Google bit? That's why we brought you in. We're the cloud team or something. Do you know what I mean? So that was kind of a very strange change in how I was sort of pitching things. But that's where the business just grew in the UK. And Ireland, like a couple of years ago, was like the UK back then. You know, it's actually exploded here in the last few years. Because we just tend to take a little bit longer to, you know, pick up the technology, certainly from a business standpoint, you know.
So when you picked G Suite initially, when Donald suggested it, was G Suite the one that you were going to go after, or did you look at others? How did the love of G Suite get to?
We use it ourselves. So like we often like to sell products that we kind of dog food and we use ourselves. So we never really, we weren't very traditional salespeople in that sense, and that I didn't like selling something that I didn't believe in. Do you know what I mean? I was extremely passionate about Google, and I can remember other people sort of, when I would go and pitch it and do the demo and the pitch, they would get really excited because, and, you know, or they would say to me afterwards, like, it's clear that you really love this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, well, I think it can change your businesses. Do you know what I mean? I genuinely feel that. I'm not just saying it, you know, and I didn't like the idea of selling something that I didn't believe in. So that was really part of it, that we use it ourselves and we saw the benefit of it. So it was just trying to impart that information to a customer. But also at the beginning, we toyed with selling other products like Dropbox. So we never, not Microsoft. I mean, remember we were technically selling Microsoft before, but there was no cloud Microsoft then. Yeah. It was a traditional, we were trying to move away from that and not sell that anymore. So it was a transition for us. And I can remember we did a sort of a grow your own business course, you know, one of the sort of local enterprise offices that the government sort of funds. And you'd pay a very small amount for the training that you were getting, you know. And we did this program over the course of 8 weeks. And we were sort of, it was often for businesses who were sort of reimagining their business or going a different direction, you know. And we were sort of, at the end, you kind of pitch, you know, so you do marketing and you do finance, each week you do a different thing. And then at the end, you had a business plan, you kind of pitched it to everybody. And I can remember people laughing at us, like laughing at the idea of us getting rid of this IT support business and selling this cloud thing. Like, what a joke. And one of those companies coming back to us 5 or 10 years later, actually looking for advice because they hadn't gone, they were a competitor sort of in the IT space, and they hadn't gone the cloud route. And they were like, Fintan, how can you help us? We never embraced this thing, you know. Oh, yeah, I remember you're that guy that laughed at us at the the thing, you know, 5 or 10 years ago. So it was sort of strange back then. People didn't take it seriously, you know. So that was hard, and it was hard selling it in Ireland. But like I said, in the UK things were different. In Ireland, technology, you know, when I say in Ireland, I mean like homegrown Irish companies. Technology is often seen, I think it's changing now, and it has changed over the last few years, but technology is seen as an expense. It's seen in the same way as you would look at something like your heating or your light. It's just something you have to have. It's not seen as something you invest in. And so when you look at Irish companies, you'll see IT manager, maybe you'll see IT director, but you'll very often you won't see as many chief information officers, chief technology officers, where in the UK you will, because the technology part of the business will have a seat at the board level. And not that it doesn't happen in Ireland, but it's less likely to happen. I think that's definitely a shift, has changed, it's beginning to change. And we're seeing a sea change in that, which is fantastic. But definitely back then, like 10 years ago, it was not the case. And so trying to sell in cloud was much harder because you were selling in at this lower level and the person was then having to try and upsell.
Interesting point that, Fintan. Yeah, 10 years ago, that was very much a futuristic. Those that were moving and changing like you did and like those CIOs were the ones who were getting ahead of the game. Right now, COVID is the one thing that has now probably brought that to the attention of many a company. I know a company that, I know the MD, he's a really nice guy, and the IT is abysmal. I tried to come in for a while as a consultant and help them, and I did my damnedest to do it. And it just wouldn't go. I had to be let go, and they just stuck with what they've got. And I would imagine now maybe they'll be shoehorning someone in, but the board had no interest in technology. Yeah. And this company turning over 150 million pounds. Yeah. It's crazy. Maybe now it'll change. But
they don't see technology as an investment. You see, they don't see it as like I invest in this and I get a return on my investment that is more than what I put in. They see it as a cost, and that's the shift change. No, that's what you're saying.
Because a lot of them are so far behind that in order to get from where they are to where they need to be was a massive cost. But now I think this next 5 to 10 years will be fascinating for us.
Yeah.
And clearly for your business as well, because there must be people who are going to come out the woodwork soon who you've spoken to have said, you know what, I've had a change of heart thinking about this.
Yeah. I'm excited, and we've been really busy actually the last few weeks. We found the first month or two of COVID, everybody just kind of went, oh God, like, naturally everybody panicked, lockdown, figured out the kind of, everything's on fire. How do we just sort of stay afloat, or, how help people work from home? But now we're kind of seeing people kind of go, okay, right, it's been a few months, things are relaxing in different countries. We need to change how we work, lads. This isn't working now. So we've had a lot of inquiries and stuff in the last couple of weeks where people are starting to go, okay, we need to really change how we're working. This isn't, this old way of doing things is just dead. Do you know what I mean? You guys saw that cartoon thing. I think I shared it in our little alliance group with the guys sitting in the boardroom, and they're all sort of having a chat, and then he's saying, well, digital transformation is years away. It's just a buzzword. We don't need to worry about it. There's this giant, swinging, what are they, on a crane, the ball coming in, COVID-19 written on it, about to smash through the wall, And I think
there's another similar cartoon of the board sitting around the boardroom table. You've got the CTO, the CEO, the C whatever, all the other C-suite there talking about digital change, and then you've got the COVID 19 member there making the change. Likewise, talking about it for years, and then the COVID guy gets on the board, and it happens straight away.
Well, these things are true, and there's always a positive, and I'll reference it in my book later on. But the Black Death, which is a plague everyone knows about, if it wasn't for the Black Death, we would probably be technology as a society 200 years behind.
Wow.
The Black Death advanced technology and advanced where we are about 200 years. This isn't anywhere comparable with the Black Death, but there's always something that comes out of it, and it has kicked up the backside everybody to get into online cloud video, and I reckon at least 80% will walk away continuing it. And the 20%, and I know some of them can't wait to get back to the office where I can see those people. You work, people, work. Yeah, those people, they're going to die off soon.
Talking about timescales, where do you see Damson in the next 5 years?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting question. And it kind of depends on what metric you want to measure it by. The business has in the last couple of years has kind of gone leaps and bounds. We went over the million mark there a year or so ago, and that was great. And we did 1.3 million last year, which is fantastic. And we started to grow our team a bit. We've had some new people join, and actually in the last week or so, we had a new employee join, Lydia, and Isabel's joined our team a few weeks back. And we work very closely with a lot of sort of external companies as well, which is sort of how we've managed to grow the business, as you know, like the CloudShed team. I know you guys are big fans of theirs as well for the training. And I think I see us growing our team. I'd hope that we would have a team maybe of kind of 20 people, 20 plus people at that stage. That's what I would hope. I would hope that we would have a steady turnover. I think the sort of recurring revenue is great with Google. It helps you to plan. It helps you to grow the business. In terms of other targets or areas, I think yeah, it's kind of an interesting one. I always said that I didn't necessarily want to do this forever, but I love running my own business. Do you know what I mean? I love helping customers. I think I want to move us more into, and as we have done over the last few years, into that sort of like really changing how people work. And we do a lot of stuff within the sort of term digital transformation space, which I don't really like, but I know you guys are probably familiar with some of Google's digital transformation labs, where you sort of go in and you look at the business processes, and that's a little bit more of my background. And we're doing more work in that area where we're not just, changing the technology, because that's a piece of it, but it's also the people and the process part. And we're going into, particularly in bigger companies, where smaller businesses, it can be easier to sometimes can be easier to change the processes because it's a smaller number of people. But when you have 500 people or 1,000 people, how do you help that organization look at processes that they've had in place for 5 or 10 or 20 years and actually change how they work? Because you can change the technology, but and I think you referenced it earlier, Carl, people can still go back to doing it the way they did before if you don't remove that other way of doing it. You don't sort of force the change and help them along that sort of change path. So I think I want to do more in that area. I want us to maybe develop that part of the business more deeply, I suppose, as we have been doing over the last year or so. But over the next 5 years, that's going to be an area of focus, definitely.
That's a fascinating insight into what you guys are doing over there with G Suite and everything. So getting into your more personal use of technology, what would you say is like the device that matters the most to you, the one that you have to have maybe to run Damson? If everything disappeared, what would you need?
What would I need? I think I'd need my laptop. If I could only have one thing.
Over your mobile?
Yeah, I know you're big on sort of the mobile, and I do work on my mobile a lot. But like if I had to pick 3 things to have, that to run the business, for me it would be my camera, my laptop, and my phone. Do you know what I mean?
This is your desert island, your camera, laptop, and your phone.
Well, I don't know with the desert island thing. I don't know. You have that question earlier on. I don't know if they'd be much value on a desert island. Maybe the camera to record my.
Well, let's ask about this. It's got to be technology. And what would you take on a desert island?
Okay, so the desert island question. I think it has to be practical, because like 3 pieces of technology. Like you'd need power. So I have in there solar panels. Like you need so that needs to be one thing. So you've used up one. Is a phone any?
No one else has mentioned solar panels. It's literally the most important part. Yeah.
It's the most important part. Like otherwise it lasts for a period of time, then it's dead. It's just a dead piece of technology. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Good thinking there. Yeah. Solar panels.
Yeah. So solar panels has to be one. And then I think it's got to be some sort of long distance communication. Do you know what I mean? So like maybe some sort of radio wave communication thing that you could, that would be able to communicate a vast distance to hopefully get rescued.
That'd be shortwave radio, wouldn't it? Shortwave radio is super long distance.
I think so, yeah.
Shortwave radio would be ham radio. Yeah.
So something like that. But then would they know where you were? Maybe they could triangulate position. Maybe then a GPS thing might be the next best thing.
Shortwave radio, I don't believe you can use to find location. You can use it to communicate long ways, because have you heard of number stations?
But then the third thing could be a GPS, so that you could tell people where. So then that's if you're going to get rescued. If you're never going to get rescued, then I suppose solar panels and some entertainment, an iPad and
solar panel, Netflix, and iPad.
yeah, exactly. So Maybe it depends on the situation.
So have you got any heroes, any famous people in the tech world maybe, or anywhere that you look up to, you admire?
I'm a big, I think Richard Branson is kind of cool. I love the story of him sort of being dyslexic and leaving school at 16 and starting a mail record company and a postal record company from like a phone box or something like that. So I love those kind of stories just about starting a business from anywhere. I was a big Steve Jobs fan. I know he was a bit of a, people have sort of said he was a bit of a hard person to work with. But I think it's kind of interesting that for someone like him, because he's passed away, that his legacy, the people who are creating technology, whatever it is, whether it's software, like Google, or whether it's Apple or software and hardware, but hardware is the kind of primary thing. They're the inventors of today. Do you know what I mean? They're, we would have looked at inventors previously in a different light, and we don't necessarily look on technologists or sort of entrepreneurs in the same way, but not all of them, but many of them are. Do you know what I mean? And he's long gone, but people are still using the technology that his company built. Do you know what I mean? I think that's kind of cool. That's a cool legacy. Do you know what I mean? That there's, my nephew playing on an iPad right now. Do you know what I mean? That thanks to Steve Jobs,
Apple's still not really brought anything out since Steve Jobs has died. Anything?
Oh yeah, there hasn't been any huge leap since then, and that's interesting, isn't it? It shows maybe how important he was to the company.
Great example, I think, Fintan, because everyone, you can pick Steve Jobs because of the things that he did. What makes him a great example for people to learn about is that he was a flawed human being. And that's because it's easy to idolize. We have this right now with this whole statue debate. You can idolize Steve Jobs, but if you look into him, he wasn't a great father, and he wasn't a great
There's loads of and there's a couple of movies. I think there was 2 movies that were made, and some documentaries, and they delve on that sort of area of he was shitty in this part of his life, or not great, as you say, as a father or whatever. So it's not to say that, and there are people who who are heroes, who are amazing fathers and stuff like that, and they they're not focusing on the businesses. Like, people decide to focus their efforts in different places. So. Yeah.
He brought more to the world. The man, we wouldn't have Pixar really if it wasn't for Steve Jobs. No. And to be honest, Pixar brings a lot of joy to a lot of children.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah. I reckon it's a good time to move on to our recommendations then, unless you have anything else you want to say, or any wild card question you want to throw in, Carl.
Wild card questions. No, because
about Fintan.
No, we do blow trumpets and things like this, but I was just
gotchas.
Big up respect for running your business for 15 plus years from scratch. I didn't know that, Fintan, and that's no joke to do that. So big respect to you and your brother for doing it.
Thanks. Yeah, it isn't easy to run your own business, and there's times it's hard. And actually, the transition for us from sort of IT support and selling that off and moving to the cloud thing, that was difficult financially as well, because it was literally at the moment of the crash, and as you know, we were hit hard here in Ireland, and that was very, very tough times. But yeah, we managed to stay afloat and fight through it. So
I've got a little wild card question that's just come into my head based on what you said there.
Oh Jesus!
So, as you know, we do IT support, but we build it around G Suite and our model. Back then, when you were moving from IT support to Damson to G Suite to full cloud, would you have considered our model if you'd known about it?
Your model is very interesting, James, and we've talked about it before, the two of us. It did sort of intrigue me, and I think it might have done at the time. I think if we maybe were sort of in contact at the time, it definitely, I could have ended up seeing us setting up a model like that, because part of it was trying to figure out how do we make revenue off this. But I really enjoy now, if I was to know everything I know now, I still would have gone the direction we went, because I love the large structural change that we try to help organizations make. And we're often part of large projects that might run for 3 months or 6 months, or, it could be working with customers for sometimes a year or so. Do you know what I mean? On the same sort of project, which, in large organizations, that's how it is. And it can be very difficult, but it's also very rewarding. And it's different. Do you know what I mean? And I do miss sometimes working with the smaller businesses. We do work with some small businesses, but where all of our businesses would have been sort of sub 50 employees. Now most of them are 50 plus, and most of them are in the hundreds or thousands of employees, you know. So it is very different. You're working with, and the challenge can be you're working with someone, the people can change, you know, like you can be working with an IT team and they can just move to another company, you know, because a whole lot of people decide to change jobs. So that can be difficult. It's a very different type of business. But I do enjoy working with the bigger companies, and I like that sort of was almost a career change for me, you know, like Kyle joking, we were joking earlier on about sort of, you know, done the same job for X amount of time, and that's true, but it's strange because my career has had different points where we do very different things now in Damson Cloud than we did in Damson Technologies, you know. But and I didn't mention it, but we did actually set up a new company in 2011 as Damson Cloud, and the technology business was sort of separate. We technically kind of sold that off because we had merged with Raheem, our business partner in the UK. We'd merged with his business, so it was easier to kind of set up a new one. But we maintained the name, and I think, yeah, it was a big change, but it was an exciting one, you know. And I like taking on new challenges. If I'm not sort of keeping myself challenged, I'll get bored, you know, and that's why I do the video stuff now, you know, I do the weekly videos, and I've built up our YouTube channel, and that was my new challenge I needed a couple of years ago, you know, like you guys with the podcast.
Still waiting for that cartoon filter to come out on your next video.
I did think about it. I thought I put it on the whole video and I was like, no, it looks crazy. Maybe I'll just do one for James.
Let's start the recommendations, and first recommendation will be the Damson Cloud YouTube channel. There you go.
Yeah, please, thank you.
Straight in there for tips for you. I've been a bit lazy on my recommendations in that I'm still watching Spook on BBC iPlayer, which I've been watching for the last
podcasts now.
Yeah. But as Fintan was talking about Steve Jobs, I thought, I also recommend the book Jobs by Stephen Levey if you haven't read it. It's the official autobiography.
Yeah.
But he was given free rein to write about whatever he wanted. Jobs let him have full control. And he wrote it right up to Jobs' death and after Jobs' death. So he was actually there. I think he wasn't there. He wasn't there when Jobs died, but he was not in the same room, but he was in the same area and stuff like that. That's how close he got to Jobs when he was writing it. So yeah, you should check that book out. It's better than any of the films.
Agreed. It's a good book, that.
Cool.
So next book is the one you were talking about earlier, The Black Death.
Yeah, I often speak about the Black Death with my father about it, and he always says to me, son, the Black Death was the greatest movement and improvement for working class people, because I ironically come from a background of a union man, a Labour man, a person who nearly was a Labour MP in 1983. I grew up with Karl Marx and Napoleon pictures in my house as a kid, and of course turned out to be a capitalist entrepreneur, or at least right-hand man capitalist entrepreneur as I got older. And the Black Death was something that was a terrible pandemic that lasted over 200 years, decimated the population of Europe by 30 to 40%, but moved us forward dramatically in terms of where we are in the world. And we would not have had the Renaissance, we would not have discovered the physics, Isaac Newton. It's amazing what these things can actually bring. But when everyone gets stressed out about COVID-19, you want to learn about what the Black Death was like. It was bad news.
So it's cool.
And is that what the book is about, yeah?
The book is a series of lectures, actually. It is one of the learning courses you can get on Audible. So it's 24 university lectures, but they're done in the lecturer is good, light-hearted, add some comedy to it. And it's fascinating. And it takes you through how the Black Death affected politics, the arts, the general public, where it came from, how did it get here. Really good.
Part of the Great Courses.
Yes, that's right. The Great Courses.
The Great Courses is a lecture series recommended by Bill Gates as well. You pick well there.
Yeah, it's good. That's a compliment. I'm going to take that one. Picked well, which in inference is usually, Carl, you pick rubbish, but you're all right. I'll accept it.
Take an audio cut of that and a little Giphy and stick it in our chat room. Carl, pick well.
That'll go on the back of my book. Thanks.
Yeah.
Is this yours now? The NPR podcast?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so it's a NPR, National Public Radio in the US, and they do loads of different stuff. But they've started a bunch of podcast series, and this one's relatively recent. It's called Throughline, from NPR, and it's two show hosts. I can't remember their names, a man and a woman, and their tagline is "Going back in time to understand the present." So they pick a topic that's the topical right now. So whether it's, say riots at the moment, or protests or whatever that are happening, or, maybe it's, but whatever it is, something that's topical in the news, and they go back in time to find the point in time where that happened before, or, and they basically link the history together. So it's actually not unlike what you're talking about with the plague there, Kyle. They might say for COVID-19, they might go back and say, here's what happened with the last pandemic, and here's how it's relevant right now. So, for example, they did one called The Mask, and they went back and looked at the invention of the N95 mask and how it actually came about. And it was really interesting, the sort of progression of the old school masks, from, I don't know, the 1900s that looked terrifying, to the modern mask that we have today, and how history can help you understand the present, basically, is the kind of...
Yeah, because those old plague masks with the long noses were just there to keep people away from your face, weren't they?
Yeah.
Around, people couldn't get close enough to spread it.
That is mentioned in the book about the Black Death, that later on centuries, doctors looked like scary beak bird things, these long noses that were the original masks that they used, when they worked out. Well, they thought at the time it was smell-based, but eventually they worked out what bacteria it was,
And they talk about that. They talk about what they thought it was, and then how we got to like filters and sealing off the mask, and right up to the modern day mask that was invented, and how it was invented and who invented it. It was really interesting, that particular one. But there's loads of different ones, and everything from litter to masks to current topical things. So highly recommend that. Really enjoyable podcast. They tend to be about 30 minutes to an hour, so they're not too long. Some of them will get more in depth, will be an hour long. But
sounds good, because How Stuff Works style one.
Sort of, a little bit, and I love history, so for me the kind of linking of the two is really nice, because it's something that's topical at the moment, and it's like, oh, that's why that is the way it is, so like if the US has invaded some country, well, what's the history of this? Why are they doing that? And they go right back maybe 100 years, maybe 200 years.
Much more history should be taught. People should study their history, because if you know what's coming next, you need to look what's happened before.
Sounds like a worthwhile subscription, that one does. Be finding that on my podcast app.
Definitely.
Thank you for joining us. I think we can wrap it up now. It's been a great podcast. Interview was really superb. Learned a lot about Damson and your recommendations. And the first of still the solar panels on your desert island. No one's mentioned that yet, and you can't do anything about that.
James, we've got long form on this by a long shot, but I like it, and I think it shows that we can go long form on this on occasion. When we've got the right person in the room, we can just keep on yabbering.
Yeah, that's the one thing with the NPR. They're a bit amateurish at 30 minutes. Come on. Hour and 42 minutes. You can do it.
They need to extend it out.
We're still not up there with Joe Rogan that I like and you don't like, but he'll gather on for 3 hours.
That's the secret. If we go for 3 hours, then maybe if we get enough episodes, we can sell it for $100 million. Maybe it's all about length, not quantity or quality.
Well, you'd have to ask your wife about that. I don't know.
That's quickly.
Come on, that sat up. It was an open goal, It
was.
Oh well, I'm ending it now. Anyway, thanks for everyone listening and joining in. We'll put the links in the show notes. Don't forget to check out Damson Cloud and Fintan's YouTube channel. He's got some great videos on there about G Suite, and the most recent one was Google Chat and how it Google Voice transfer calls. That was it.
Yeah.
So
very popular, actually seems to be. So,
you guys starting a podcast that people should subscribe to?
I haven't done, but we are going to, because I've got a lot of interviews, so we're gonna strip out the interviews that we've done and turn those into podcasts. And I think we're looking at maybe doing a monthly one. I don't know if with the weekly video commitment. I think for us a monthly one would probably make more sense, just in terms of all the stuff we have on. So check out our website for that. We'll keep it updated.
DamsonCloud.com. Was it .com? Yeah, .com.
Oh, DamsonCloud.com. .co.uk just redirects to .com anyway.
You got .ie as well?
No, we have Damson.ie, which is the original website.
Quick, go buy it, Carl. DamsonCloud.ie. Anyway, thanks for joining us, and thanks everyone for subscribing. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks, guys.